Hello, I'm Esther Gitu-Yuat. It's Tuesday, January 18th. This is Africa 54.
Civilian groups in Sudan are calling for strikes and civil disobedience. Somalis flee to the cities to escape hunger and drought, only to face new risks of COVID infection. And we'll have an update on a new COVID vaccine that could be a global game changer.
We begin our broadcast in Sudan, where civilian groups are calling for 2 days of civil disobedience and general strikes after medics say security forces killed at least 7 people. Here's David Doyle with the details.
It was one of the bloodiest days since demonstrations against an October coup began. 7 people killed by Sudanese security forces on Monday, according to medics. Civilian groups are now calling for an escalation of protests. 2 more days of strikes and civil disobedience starting on Tuesday in response to the violence. Security forces had fired volleys of tear gas as they blocked thousands of protesters from advancing on Khartoum's presidential palace. The protest movement aligned Central Committee of Sudanese Doctors, which reported the 7 deaths, said security forces had also used stun grenades and live ammunition. Huge crowds have been taken to the streets since the October 25th coup. They want civilian rule after the takeover ended a military-civilian power-sharing deal agreed after longtime leader Omar al-Bashir was ousted. The latest violence threatens to further deepen the gulf between military leaders and the protest movement. Government sources put Monday's death toll at 3. And a Security and Defence Committee, formed under Sudan's ruling council, commended security forces for their restraint. It also paid tribute to a police officer killed in protests on Thursday and said an anti-terrorism force would be established to counter potential threats, without elaborating.
David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. The worst drought in Somalia in decades has millions of people dependent on food aid and thousands more flocking to cities to escape hunger. At makeshift shelters on the outskirts of the capital, displaced people are facing cramped conditions and poor sanitation while coping with the COVID-19 pandemic. Mohammed Sheikh Noor reports from Mogadishu.
This is the Najah camp for internally displaced persons on the outskirts of Mogadishu. Many fled their villages and came here to escape severe drought conditions. Mother of 4, Muhabba Adam, is preparing a meal for her young children at the camp. She fled drought in her village in Lower Shabelle, some 90 kilometers away.
We had no rain for 2 consecutive seasons. Drought has devastated both livestock and farming, so we had to leave. We spent 1 day trekking all the way from Audigleh to this neighborhood in Dainileh.
But conditions here are also difficult. 56-year-old Nur Hassan Ali and his family fled their rural homes too. He looks weak as he navigates through the camp's shelters.
I was uprooted by drought and the suffering that we encountered, enduring 2 seasons without rains. My livestock began to die because of the long drought. I had to run away with my children and finally reached here. Here I don't have anything, and my children are hungry and don't have anything to eat.
Faiza Omar oversees the camp and works to keep track of the families arriving daily.
The Nija camp is home to 370 families who have recently been displaced by the drought and whose livestock have also been wiped out by the drought. So far, these people have not received any assistance, either from the government or from aid agencies. They lack shelter from the sun and the cold. They also do not have a place from which they can shield themselves in case it rains.
The drought and influx of people on the outskirts of Mogadishu is a burden on the city's healthcare system. City hospitals are still grappling with an upsurge of COVID-19 infections. and poor living conditions are another source of worry for health officials.
This drought comes at a time when we are grappling with the burden of recurrence of COVID-19. So this drought has only added a further burden on the already existing COVID-19 problem that has caused sickness and death. The drought has its own pain and plight as it causes the spread of the disease.
Somalia's government and UN humanitarian agencies have warned that millions are in urgent need of food assistance due to drought and new strains of COVID-19. Officials say thousands of refugees living in camps near Mogadishu remain vulnerable to waterborne disease due to poor sanitation, congestion, and access to clean water. Mohamed Sheikh Noor for VOA News, Mogadishu, Somalia.
The European Union Special Envoy to the Sahel says the EU and its partners do not intend to isolate Mali and its military-led government. The EU is calling for talks despite a plan to severely sanction the country for failing to organize elections. The Economic Community of West African States hit Mali with tough sanctions earlier this month after the junta that seized power in 2020 dropped a proposed February election and said it would stay in office for another 4 years. The EU says it will impose its own restrictions in line with ECOWAS, likely later in January. In an interview with Reuters, Emmanuel Del Rey, the EU Special Representative to the Sahel, said the door remains open for dialogue. In a separate interview with VOA National Security Correspondent Jeff Seldin, Del Rey explains why, despite ongoing efforts by the EU and other partners, the Sahel region is at such a crisis point.
We are going through a particularly difficult moment for a number of reasons. Of course, the first reason is sociological, in the sense that the poverty of the countries, the level of illiteracy, the problems connected with agriculture, which is not, unfortunately, productive as it was in the past, climate change, refugees, IDPs. This is a picture that describes the situation at social level, which demonstrates that the challenges are so big that it's very difficult to find very rapid solutions. And this is why, unfortunately, despite the immense efforts by the European Union, but also by other actors such as the US, for instance, and others, we cannot obtain results in an immediate manner. So much that, in fact, for instance, most of the times when we talk about development, we have to be more engaged in emergency, because we have emergency situations due to, as I said, big challenges like, for instance, huge floods or famine or others that distract us from the fact that we should always concentrate on development, although we do, but we cannot always be engaged as much as we would like, because we have the problems with emergency. So it's a complex situation. The other big issue that I have to underline is security. Security is a major issue in the Sahel. The Mauritania, for instance, has found some interesting solutions. They have developed a special methodology by which they are able to control more than the others their security, internal security situation. But Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and Chad are really subjugated by the situation of security, because unfortunately the situation in the countries is such that most of the communities, especially in remote areas, are victims of attacks by terrorist groups or armed groups in general. And the situation is very complex to control, because of course we are not talking about organized groups or something. We are talking about an asymmetric war that is very difficult to follow and is very difficult to tackle.
That was EU Special Representative to the Sahel, Emanuela Del Rey, speaking to Jeff Seldin, VOA's national security correspondent. The federal government of Nigeria has launched a nationwide vaccination campaign to scale up the country's COVID-19 response. Nigeria has a goal to inoculate 50% of its targeted population and reach herd immunity by the end of 2022. The plan forecasts that vaccine sites will be established at private health facilities facilities, universities, colleges, stadiums, motor parks and shopping malls, among other venues across various states. Here's more from Channels TV in Nigeria.
The federal government flagged off a nationwide mass vaccination campaign in November 2021 to scale up the country's COVID-19 response. The exercise is part of efforts to vaccinate at least 40% of the eligible population by the end of February 2022 and 70% by the end of the year. To achieve this target, the government expanded the COVID-19 vaccination network to increase access to the vaccines.
We have now even expanded the scope in terms of the number of health facilities that now have the vaccines. We have now involved the private sector, but beyond that, we have also established mass vaccination sites. I'm sure you can go around and see some of these mass vaccination sites, including mobile sites. This is a testament to the fact that the vaccines are now available, so we are now pushing hard into the interior to make sure that every single person, no matter where they are, is not left behind in terms of their access to vaccines.
Notwithstanding the modalities in place, including the deployment of mobile teams to vaccinate people in public places, statistics from the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency show that Nigeria is not even close to its COVID-19 vaccination target. For instance, only 7 states have achieved between 10 to 31% of their targeted population. Only states like Nasarawa, Jigawa, Ogun, Oyo and Kwara seem to be on track. There are many challenges causing delays, but vaccine hesitancy remains a major barrier.
The biggest challenge that we face is when you come across a person that is literate, exhibiting the habit of hesitancy, refusing to believe in science, and refusing to accept this vaccine and the reality of the time. That is a source of challenge to all of us, particularly and most importantly, our professional senior colleagues in the health industry.
We are getting more vaccines. As I'm talking to you today, we have enough to vaccinate as many as we can. So we are waiting for people to come and get vaccinated. Before we are talking of the vaccines are not enough, but nowadays the vaccines are enough, but the people are hesitating.
So far, Nigeria has administered 15.3 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. 4.6 million people have also received their second jabs. This figure represents 2.2% of the targeted population, which is a far cry from the 40% target set for the end of February 2022.
That was a report from our affiliate station Channels TV in Nigeria. We'd like to hear what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, Israeli archaeologists find an ancient treasure in the Sea of Galilee. We'll have a report. But first, let's check in with Heidi Adams to see what's on tap for Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
Be sure to join me for the next Straight Talk Africa as we reflect on the life and legacy of the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We'll speak to fellow anti-apartheid activist, the Reverend Alan Busak, about their friendship and their last conversation. We'll also introduce you to the new African Union ambassador to the United States, Hilda Suka Mafudze, about her plans for the young people on the continent and in the diaspora. So join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
There's a new vaccine in the fight against COVID-19. Scientists at the U.S. National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas, have developed a vaccine they say will help get more people immunized in low-income countries. The vaccine, CORBEVAX, has been developed by a team led by Dr. Peter Hotez, co-director of the Center for Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital and Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine, and Professor Maria Elena Bottazzi, Associate Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. The researchers say their vaccine is cheaper to produce and distribute, and they do not intend to patent it, allowing anyone with the capacity to reproduce it. Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu spoke to both professors for more insight on the vaccine.
CORBEVAX is really the vaccine that was co-developed by Biological E in India. We managed to transfer the technology of how to make a recombinant protein. In this case, is a receptor binding domain that really targets the original virus. But now, of course, we know that it also can confer really great protection against the variant of concerns, especially Beta and Delta, and we're in studies right now to evaluate Omicron. So we take this engineering of recombinant proteins, we produce the constructs, we call them seeds, and then we transfer these to the manufacturers like BioE. Then we provide them, the procedures of how we can produce them in the lab, and then they, of course, scale them to industrial scales. I mean, Biological E can make 100 million doses of this vaccine, right, from the recipe that we originally gave them. And as with Biological E, we're doing it with many other manufacturers such that they can then really increase the availability. After, major studies, clinical studies in India, we can now see that this is a very efficacious and safe and highly producible vaccine.
Dr. Hotez, why is this vaccine suitable for low and middle income countries?
Well, the real advantage is, number one, it's there's no limit to the amount you could scale. You can make billions of doses. It uses an older technology similar to that used to make the recombinant hepatitis B vaccine. And that's significant because that vaccine is made locally in multiple countries in the global south, in India and Indonesia and Bangladesh and Vietnam and Brazil and elsewhere. So that if you need to produce a vaccine locally, this is the technology to do it. We've transferred the technology with no patents, no strings attached, and we help in the co-development to at least 4 countries so far, with more to follow: India, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and now Botswana. This potentially could be actually made in sub-Saharan Africa. BioE is the furthest along, the one in India. They've made now 150 million doses. That's ready to roll out, and they have the capacity for 1 billion doses. It's a high bar because we've got to provide 9 billion doses for low and middle income countries, 20 billion globally. I doubt we're going to do that with mRNA vaccines and the other technologies. So this will come in order to get people vaccinated by 2022. And if we really work hard and get people vaccinated now, potentially we can forestall a new variant for the summer.
What are the prospects of this vaccine being approved by the EU and the United States for travelers?
Biological E, who is a vaccine manufacturer that has years of experience working with the World Health Organization, and many of their vaccines are pre-qualified, are already working with the agencies to seek that emergency listing for the global use. We can also increase the level of distribution around the world.
There have been a very big challenge around vaccine hesitancy. There are countries where vaccines have been thrown away because people were refusing to get vaccinated. What do you think will make CORBEVAX different, where people will be more accepting?
They've already taken a vaccine like it through the hepatitis B vaccine, similar to yeast fermentation technology, either for themselves or their kids. Easy to scale, one of the lowest cost vaccines, one of the best safety profiles, a tried and true technology. People are willing to accept it. So when you go down the checklist, our vaccine checks a lot of boxes.
What are the main takeaways then when we talk about CORBEVAX as a new vaccine coming in the pool of vaccine against COVID-19?
having very trustworthy partnerships. I think that it was key, right? So our vaccine center has been working for years with the developing country vaccine manufacturer network, working directly with locations in the low middle income countries to enable them, self-sufficiency and self-reliance. The fact that we already had 10-year prior experience working with coronavirus vaccines that really enabled that this technology could be very rapidly readapted for the COVID-19 sequence. The procedures are very well known. The regulators know about them. The manufacturers know about them. The supply requirements are very well established. So they're accessible and they're affordable. And the best takeaway is this could be a game changer also in acceptance, because it's already comes with years of experience in how they behave with regards to safety, including safety in a very young population.
At some point, someone has to step up and say, what are we going to do to really help the world's low and middle income countries? And to tie it down with bickering and fighting over legalities and patents and intellectual property, this is not the way. At some point, we have to show a humanitarian concern for all the world's people. And at the same time, it's even in our own enlightened self-interest to prevent these new variants.
Dr. Peter Otes, Dr. Maria Elena Bottazi, thank you so much to both of you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
That was Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu speaking to Dr. Peter Otes and Professor Maria Elena Bottazi. Initial data from the Indian pharmaceutical firm Biologica E shows a 90% efficacy for Covovax in preventing severe diseases in COVID-19 patients. The Independent National Electoral Commission and the European Center for Electoral Support are asking women in Nigeria to play key roles in elections and vie for elective positions, as their participation is crucial. This comes as February's 12 area council elections in the Capital Territory, Abuja, draws near. This report is from Channels TV in Nigeria.
Officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the European Center for Electoral Support are holding this town hall meeting with women groups and gender-focused civil society organizations in Abuja ahead of the FCT area council elections in February. The exercise is targeted at scaling up the number of women participating in the elections.
As at 2019 general elections in FCT, 601,618 females registered in the FCT, while out of the 601,000, only 217 women voted on election days. This figure is too poor, and we hope that in the upcoming FCT elections, council elections, more women who have collected their PVC will come out to vote.
Beyond the issues of inclusivity, the electoral body also wants the women groups to advocate for a peaceful conduct of the forthcoming elections into the 6 area councils in the FCT.
As CEOs, CSOs, and women groups, you should be enlightening our youths, because in every election, whenever there is trouble, it's our youths. Please, after this roundtable, you go back to your bases and start educating them on the need for them to have a peaceful, free, fair, and credible election in every city.
However, the European Center for Electoral Support is asking women groups in Nigeria to play key roles in electoral reforms that will open up opportunities for more elective positions for women.
With the ongoing process of the electoral reform, we saw the huge efforts that have been devoted by women groups, and the constitution review process ongoing will capture the needs of Nigerian women and open up the space for women, not just as participants, but also as candidates, aspirants for elective office. Do not sit back and watch the process. Follow the process closely. Where you need to reach out to your representatives, reach out to them.
It is exactly 1 month to the February 12 area council elections, and the hope is that more women will participate in the election.
That report was filed by our affiliate station, Channels TV in Nigeria. There is a saying in Israel that you can't spit without hitting an archaeological treasure. That's what happened in the northern Israeli town of Migdal on the Sea of Galilee, the birthplace of Mary Magdalene, a follower of Jesus Christ, according to the Christian Gospels. The Israeli government wanted to expand a busy road, but first officials had to ensure that nothing archaeologically important would be paved over. Linda Gradstein and Ricky Rosen have the story of what they found.
10 years ago, Israeli archaeologists uncovered a synagogue with mosaic floors and colored frescoes in Migdal, the hometown of Mary Magdalene, one of Jesus' followers most often mentioned in the Gospels. Now, on the other side of a busy highway, they have just discovered a second synagogue. This is the only time that two synagogues were found in the same site from the time of Jesus.
We are exposing a huge neighborhood dated to the 1st century AD, to the time that Jesus is here and Maria Magdalena and the temple is working in Jerusalem. That's the timetable, and it's very sharp, it's very clear. We don't have anything earlier and nothing later. So, and it became very, very important and very excited excavation.
At the time, Jewish prayer services and sacrifices were performed in the temple in Jerusalem. Local synagogues like these two excavated in Migdal were used for community gatherings and Bible readings.
We are standing on a synagogue 2,000 years ago. Unbelievable. It gave a lot of new information. The connection between the Jewish here and to the temple and to Jerusalem. And the stone itself, which is unique and beautiful. It's brought from Jerusalem, from the temple, to the Jewish here, the community here in the Galilee.
It is an especially large site covering the whole ancient town of what was called Magdala, and the archaeologists need scores of workers to carefully excavate it. These workers are almost all West Bank Palestinians who come to the site with special permits.
Work here is good, thank God. There are workers, there is work, and it's a beautiful area. They taught us what we have to do, and we enjoy the work.
According to Israeli law, all construction projects must be preceded by an archaeological survey. Many important sites have been found in this accidental way, and the archaeologists working at this highway intersection hope their discoveries will be preserved.
There's a dilemma now, both for the Israeli Highway Company and the Antiquities Authority. What do we do now moving forward? We're trying to convince the government that it's impossible to give up on this important archaeological site and to change the planning for the highway.
So far, the archaeologists have not found any direct mention of Jesus, although tradition and scripture teach that he preached in this area. And some Bible historians believe there is a good chance that Mary Magdalene even visited this synagogue. Linda Gradstein for VOA News, Migdal, Israel.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington,